From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios. That is Sean Fazende. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. You guys can find us wherever you listen to and watch your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the little bell notification button right there. You get notified every time we upload a new podcast or we go live. Sean, it is a Tuesday. We don't usually do Tuesday shows, but we thought today was a special reasoning for it. Pete Carmichael was officially let go by the Saints today, along with two other assistant coaches, Cody Burns and
Bob Bicknell.
Thank you. I was about to say Bill Bicknell. Excuse me. But what are your initial thoughts on Pete Carmichael getting fired, and was it the right move for the Saints to make?
All right, so here we go. You asked me yesterday on this pod, when do I expect moves to be made? I said quickly. And also, sometimes a pod just lines up perfectly with the news cycle. You know, we talked about this yesterday, and I hadn't talked to anyone within the organization about a potential move coming or if they felt this way, but I watch the wild card weekend, and I said the biggest thing that stood out to me was the synergy and chemistry between quarterback and play caller and how much it freaking matters. And that what's happening in the playoffs tells the truth on what's working in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And that inevitably the Saints had to make the decision. They had to make the decision about whether or not the duo of Carr and Carmichael was really the way things closed out, which was pretty good, or the slow start, which one was the bigger issue. And more importantly, at their best, Carr and Carmichael, will they ever reach that synergy, that chemistry, that energy that we're seeing in the playoffs right now? And I have to say, the premium on that, the value of that, is probably as high as it's ever been in the entire NFL. Coaching quarterback always made a difference. We know that. But the way the league has been specialized, the way the league has gone from an offensive standpoint, you have to have it or you're not getting it, or you're not getting what you want. It's going to be a bumpy season. And I think we could be fair in saying the Saints certainly had a bumpy season. Or is it the best approach to say, you know what? This isn't going to work. Even at their best, it's just we just don't feel like it's ever going to be as consistent enough as it needs to be. Well, we got our answer today, and it was option B. Allen decided it had run its course, and it just took too long this year for that to come together, that play-caller quarterback chemistry, that play-caller quarterback fact-finding mission of what works, what doesn't. Red zone issues earlier in the season. Took too long to get the play action. And it's a big reason why the Saints aren't in the playoffs. And this is a team that they felt like they had enough to get to the playoffs, and it could not have felt good to watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers whip the Philadelphia Eagles in their place, a team that had that game been played in the Superdome, the Saints would have won. They played the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not even sure if the Saints would have snuck in as a 7 seed. They probably could have beat the Cowboys. You know how that game went.
I do know how that game went. I know how you feel about the Green Bay Packers this season as well.
Yeah. So basically DA pulled the plug. Now, is there a risk? Absolutely there's a risk. It's a new system. Whoever it is, it's a new system unless you stay in-house. But ultimately, it's a brutal business. It's a what have you done for me lately business. I think the risk of getting rid of Carmichael out is the reward is greater. It just... There had to be some form of substantial change other than a few lower-level assistant coaches going forward. You could not run it back the same exact way. Playing the whole, we were close to the postseason, we were close to the playoffs, a few plays here, a few plays there, we're back in the postseason. Playing that card would not have worked. And I think it would have kind of came with the same, there's this stale feeling, there's this mediocre feeling, there's this stuck-in-a-rut feeling where if that were the thinking, then it would certainly play into that that identity, if you will. So, no, I'm not surprised. And who knows how much the way Wild Card Weekend went played a role. I just know what I saw. visually speaking, you could see the teams that won and say, man, those coordinators were really good with their quarterbacks. They really, really worked well with their quarterbacks.
Played to their strengths. Yeah.
They played to their strengths. They're just on the same page by the first week of the playoffs, and we saw the clear line. And the thing about with this organization, they had that for 15 years. They had that for 15 years with quarterback and play caller. We know who they are. And so they understand that's when you have that, it makes all the difference in the world. And they made a change because they feel like that can get better. And look, I agree, because there were times this season I remember being on this podcast where I'm like, what's the identity? What do you want to do? Motion, play action, run the ball. Do you want to be a run team? Do you want to be an outside? They looked uncoordinated. That word is in the title, coordinated. They looked uncoordinated at times, which is obviously the main job of an offensive coordinator. So, did they make the right move? I'm going to say yes, they did. It is a brutal business. I'm going to get into Pete Carmichael's tenure here a little bit later, because I'm not just going to have this be a guy that put that much energy, that much work, and has had that much success in this organization is not just going to get dumped on this podcast. I refuse to let that happen. But there is a bigger picture. And it's this. Dennis Allen, this is your last chance. That's what this says to me.
Yep.
This is your last chance. Continuity has failed. The continuity, keep the train moving. Look, I was fine with it when they made it happen. When they went with that route, I understood it. I was fine with it. It just has not worked to the point of where you need it to work. And they thought a few tweaks last offseason, getting the quarterback in, get them back to where they want to be until the postseason. They got close, but they didn't get in. And that's all that matters.
Yep.
So, to me, DA, we're giving you one more shot for the Saints to make it work. If they miss the playoffs next season, the DA experiment is done. And look, we could talk about the Carmichael firing. It's the biggest name. But he didn't just fire Carmichael. Also Cody Burns.
Yep.
Also Bob Bicknell. They didn't block the interview for Joel Thomas, who is now headed to New York. So I think that, and I honestly think there's more coming. I think there could be more coming. That's 4 coaches as of the taping of this podcast that will not return in 2024, all on the offensive side of the ball. We might be in the midst of an offensive cleaning house process here. And also this. If you're going to make this change, and for this argument, I'm going to say make a change to a guy from outside the organization. Derek Carr's on the clock too, because now he's got to make it work. Because if it doesn't work with a new offensive coordinator, they don't get the best out of it. Then they have to look to their future as well,
Yep.
that he may have reached his ceiling. So there's a lot here, but I do think this is sort of the shakeup that I know the fans probably like the idea of Pete not coming back, but I think they would much more prefer even bigger changes. But this is their response to obviously a mediocre season, a disappointing season, a season that fell short. But I don't think they're done. I do not think they're done. And look, these are tough decisions. It's tough to make these kind of calls. But I ultimately think DA had to make this call, because if he had just ran it back with the same option for his year, with his life dependent on it, coaching life dependent on it, it's just not a smart move for him. And honestly, I understand why he did it, but that doesn't make it any less brutal, because his business can be brutal.
And before we get to our next topic, do you remember last offseason how we said this feels like Dennis Allen's team?
This is now Dennis Allen's team. Yes.
I feel like we might have duped ourselves last offseason in saying that, because you could look at Pete Carmichael as being a holdover of that last regime. And so now that he's gone, this is Dennis Allen's team now, because it's Dennis Allen's defense. It always has been. And now we have to see a new offense kind of ushered in.
That's a great point. It really is a great point. And, bringing in the quarterback last year, to me, they thought would be enough.
Yeah.
To be Dennis Allen's quarterback, Dennis Allen's defense. Sure, the offense has worked for 15 years, but this is truly Dennis Allen's team. Now it's really turned over into DA's team, and he's going to sink or swim next season based off the decision that he made. But look, if I were in his shoes, yes, I would have had to make that call, because honestly, your back is against the wall. Or, many thought he would be gone, and he's not gone. He's going to be here. So he had to do what's best for his franchise's success, but also his own survival as head coach of the Saints. Look, I don't think Carmichael is a scapegoat. I think he had some issues. I think this is I think he has some issues. But in saying that, please don't kid yourself and say this is all on Pete Carmichael. This is not even close to all on Pete Carmichael.
No, we'll get into more of that later. But let's talk about the possibilities of who will be replacing Pete Carmichael. Who do you think? Give me some names of guys you think, other than John Gruden, who we talked about a couple of episodes now, who is reported to have met with the Saints. Other than John Gruden, who do you think could be a real finalist for this OC job?
Yeah, well, I think we got to bring up John Gruden again just briefly because, I mean, if getting the most out of Derek Carr is the key here, John Gruden is the guy that's proven to have gotten the most out of Derek Carr. They had quarterback, play caller, chemistry. John Gruden comes with a lot of baggage, though. We've already discussed this.
That, yeah.
We know it's not just a straight shot. He's got issues with the league. He's got issues with emails. But if you're the Saints and you're Dennis Allen and you're on your last leg, it's worth the risk, obviously, if you can get the best out of it, because we all know winning is a great deodorant. It's a cure-all. It's when you start winning. And generally speaking, with stuff like that, controversy, once you get past the first couple days of the news cycle, you can generally, and everybody just kind of gets back to the daily flow of their work in football. Generally, that gets lower and lower and lower. And I think if the Saints are considering Gruden, they've already decided it's worth the backlash. So Gruden, when we talk about quarterback play caller chemistry, it's worked. It's worked. Now, there is a legitimate argument to be made. Is that system, which, the Carmichael system from Peyton to Gruden, it all came from the Gruden offense. Has that system run its course? I don't know. If they keep it in-house, is Ronald Curry going to get a look? I think he would be the next guy up, but I also think they could have done that at any point this year and got a real look at him.
And who's to say they didn't?
And got a real look.
Who's to say they didn't?
What do you mean?
Maybe he had an opportunity to have a little bit more input this season, and they just didn't tell us.
Calling plays?
Yeah.
I mean, he called plays in preseason. I didn't hear anything about him calling plays in the regular season. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, like we knew that DA did say that something was going to have to change this season, and maybe he just had more input. Maybe he wasn't calling plays. Maybe he was in Pete's ear.
My point is they had more than enough of a lull offensively to say, hey, why don't we just strip Carmichael of play calling duties and give it to Ronald Curry, see what he can do to provide a spark, and they never did that. And to be fair, Carmichael kind of worked his way out of it a little bit, at least to make it respectable in the end. Dolphins offensive coordinator Frank Smith. Again, now I've drawn the line from different system because the Shanahan system is what works in today's NFL.
Right.
Frank Smith, he's the Mike McDaniel. Again, that's a Shanahan guy. A 49ers QB coach, or I don't know his exact title, but maybe passing game coordinator, Clint Kubiak. Kubiak is one of the inventors of that system.
Familiar with the name.
Texans QB coach Gerard Johnson. Look what he's done with C.J. Stroud. Look what they've done offensively. He's the next guy up from Bobby Slowick, who to me has been one of the MVPs of the playoffs in the entire season, in addition to obviously C.J. Stroud. Eric Bieniemy is a guy that's out there. Now, I'm not sure exactly stylistically what he would run. It's not a stretch boot system like the other guys. Would he be more of a West Coast guy? Because he's from the Andy Reid sort of thing. And then it's the Chiefs' offense.
Whose offense still works, yeah, technically.
Rams OC Mike LaFleur.
Brother Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, and then I want to say this guy's name was in the mix for maybe last season or the season before that. He's in the college ranks. Liam Cohen. I know he's getting interviews right now. He was with Kentucky. He was with the Rams. So that's another name to list. Look, that's just names off the top of my head thinking. That's not anything I've gathered from any.
So he's with Kentucky now?
From any sources. That's just a list. If I were compiling a search, those would be the names that I would certainly look into. But there could be more. There could be a mystery guy we're not thinking of. Probably is. But I know this. Dennis Allen has to get that hire right. And obviously the quicker the better, but he also has to do his due diligence because he's got to get it right. I know it's a little bit of conflicting, kind of contradictory there, but the quicker they make the hire, the quicker that hire devotes his life to Derek Carr, and the better the entire offensive operation hopefully becomes from start to finish in 2024, not week 13 through 18 in 2024. And that's really what it all boils down to. So the first major shakeup has happened. The next hire DA makes is going to be a very, very important hire. Maybe his most important hire of his tenure here, because it could be the difference between him coming back in year 4 or this being his last year.
safe to say DA has to think it over, but don't overthink it. If it makes the most sense and it stylistically, it's probably the right call, right?
Absolutely. Can I just throw this out there?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mentioned Dolphins offensive coordinator Frank Smith. Interview for the Panthers head coaching job.
Wow.
So,
all right, if he's getting head coaching jobs.
All right, so
Or head coaching interviews.
Head coaching interviews. So that's what you're up against. That's what you're up against when you're dealing with these young, up-and-coming coordinators with this system. And
he's got a young quarterback.
And he's got, like, with these young, up-and-coming guys, you know, they aren't just going from one offensive coordinator position to another. They've got to get – they're getting head coaching opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
I just would have thought, because I don't think that guy Frank Smith calls the plays. I think it's McDaniels that calls the plays. So you may even have to go like the quarterback coach route, give somebody an opportunity to call plays for the first time. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge right now. So I am thoroughly intrigued with the direction that they go, because there's nothing more important this offseason than getting that right.
Right. All right. So we kind of alluded to this a little while ago. Pete Carmichael, he's not. You can't look at his time in New Orleans as a failure. Like you said, he's been here for 18 years.
Yeah.
15 of those was with Drew Brees and Sean Payton. What do you have to think about? Carmichael's
I want to make sure I get to this, because I'm not going to let anyone say that he was a failure. He was not a failure. The last 2 years were tough. It didn't work out, and like I said, I agree with the decision to try to bring in fresh ideas and new blood. But make no mistake about it. For 18 years, Pete Carmichael was an asset to this organization. People don't realize when he got here, he was the one that he was kind of the common denominator with Peyton getting Drew, and Carmichael was with Drew in San Diego, and he helped bring some of the language over that helped Drew transition. That's why he transitioned so quickly. I mean, we just spent almost full podcast talking about how long it took for the Saints to transition with coach, quarterback, and coordinator. But that didn't happen in 2006. Drew caught on very quickly. Now it's Drew, but also because there were some things that they made easier. And look, he got promoted to 2009, the offensive coordinator. He was never the primary play caller, although he did it in 2012 when Peyton was gone. They had a good offense that year. Again, he had Drew, but he was kind of the guy behind the scenes, drawing up plays. Hey, coach, you like this one? Hey, Drew, do you like this one? Those were two strong personalities, and the former head coach and Breeze. And he was kind of the quiet guy that just quietly did his job. They trusted him. And, you know, he came here in 2006. This city was in ruins. So, and at the time, the Saints offense was the measuring stick across the NFL. And he played a huge role in that. He played a huge role in that Lombardi. He played a huge role in some development from guys, from Drew and also guys behind him. And so overall, his tenure here was a positive one. Now, all things come to an end. Business can be brutal, and it's
sometimes you just need a change.
Sometimes it's just run its course.
Exactly.
And so he'll leave here. To me, he deserves respect from the fan base, because he did a lot more than probably I know that he got credit for, and he's a guy that, you know, he's the longest tenured guy. And look, he's an 06 guy, and that 06 coaching staff helped change this franchise for the better. And it was not easy for those guys to take jobs here, and they all did. And he's kind of become a New Orleanian. You know, some of those guys do that. They're not from here. They come here and they stay here long enough. Like Juan Kincaid. Juan's not from here, but now he's a New Orleans guy.
Yeah.
And he did that. He's been great to us media-wise. I don't have a strong relationship with him, but when I talk to him, we quick hello, whatever. He's very, cordial, all that stuff. So, I'm not gonna leave this podcast with hit the road, Jack. No, you made your mark here, and honestly, you had a great run in New Orleans, and you deserve to be respected.
All right.
That's how we're gonna end it.
And I know we're gonna put out another podcast tomorrow. We have Mickey Loomis speaking midday on Wednesday, so we're going to have, I'm sure, some more stuff to talk about with the nice folks watching and listening. Right,
we're gonna have some stuff to talk about, and who knows? By the time you catch this podcast, maybe more news would have broken, and there's more changes to be made or have been made. So we're gonna keep you posted as best we can, and we'll be back for another podcast here tomorrow.
All right. For Sean Fazende, I'm Vasilios. This has been the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.